is known for being one of the most powerful Avengers around. He's at a very literal god tier. So what does that say about the heroes who can humble even him? Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It's me, Amanda McKnight, aka VampX13, but you can call me Vampy. Today we'll be counting down the top 10 superheroes who humbled Thor. Who would you like to see take on the God of Thunder? Let us know in the comments. Number 10, Moon Knight. This one was insane when it happened during the Age of Khonshu's story. My mind was blown. Your mind was likely blown, and probably everyone's minds were blown. Everyone who read this, that is. And if you didn't, well, prepare to have your mind blown as I get you up to speed. During Age of Khonshu, Moon Knight turned on pretty much all of the Avengers. Did this make him a villain? Not really. He actually thought he was doing the right thing as he tried to help Khonshu prepare to take down Mephisto, who was, a pretty big bad. However, he was later made aware of the fact that Khonshu wanted to defeat Mephisto so that he, instead, could kinda rule the world and shape it in his own image, turning it into a sort of Egyptian afterlife. So in the end, Khonshu had to be defeated and imprisoned, and Moon Knight instead turned on his own god, working to help the Avengers fight back against him. But before that, Moon Knight was on a mission to collect powerful, heroic artifacts and powers to help him in his quest to aid Khonshu. One such magical and heroic artifact that he needed was Thor's hammer, and he was able to get it as it was revealed that Moon Knight could actually control the hammer. Not necessarily because he was worthy, but because of its metallic makeup, being made of uru, which means it's essentially made of moon rock. Yeah, that's what uru is. Really old moon rock from the first moon. And the moon is kind of Moon Knight's thing, which meant he didn't need to be worthy to wield Mjolnir. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love it when we talk about heroes that are getting humbled by other heroes, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. It does feed the algorithm gods. Number 9, Zeus. Love and Thunder might not have been the movie we were all hoping for, but it did have some pretty hilarious moments, and some tragically embarrassing ones for Thor as well. One such moment, which was both, happened when Thor finally met his hero, the god Zeus. However, as the saying goes, never meet your heroes. Zeus decided to remove Thor's disguise and ends up completely removing Thor's clothes as a result. Pretty embarrassing. This leaves Thor completely uncovered in front of Zeus, while everyone around Thor laughs, cause it's not just in front of Zeus, he's in front of a whole bunch of other gods. Oh boy. And Valkyrie. And Jane. Zeus isn't exactly a hero in this story, but he also isn't exactly a villain, I would say, either. He's more just like kind of a self-absorbed and stubborn god, which is what ultimately leads him into a conflict with our heroes in the story when he refuses to listen to them. And I'm sure if, we do actually get more Hercules stuff, we're gonna see that it's complicated. The Greek pantheon is just a different pantheon, so. Number 8, Black Bolt. Black Bolt ends up facing off against a venom-possessed Thor in the What If comic What If the Alien Costume Had Possessed Spider-Man. In this story, the Fantastic Four failed to remove the suit from Peter as it's too late for them to do so, with the symbiote and Spider-Man being fully bonded. This leads to Peter being drained of all life energy and rapidly aging before the suit jumps to a new host. It possesses Hulk, and when Thor arrives on the scene, decides to instead attempt to bond with Thor. While Thor fights against the alien costume, Black Bolt appears and uses his powerful voice to blast away the Venom symbiote, defeating it and saving Thor from its influence. Through, of course, defeating him. Number 7, Hercules. As was implied at the end of Love and Thunder, Zeus is not the only god that Thor faces off against. It seems that the after credits were actually setting up a future fight between the Norse hero god and the Greek one, Hercules, son of Zeus. And in the comics, this has actually happened before. Hercules has indeed beaten Thor in the past. While Thor would typically be more powerful than Hercules, I'd surmise just based on what I've read of both of these characters, there was a time when Thor's power levels had been somewhat reduced by Odin, and he challenged Hercules to a fight. And it was during this fight that Hercules actually managed to come out on top instead, so Hercules won that one. Number 6, She-Hulk. She-Hulk doesn't need to fight Thor to humble him. She just has to look at him the right way and call him out on his feelings. These two were an item for a while in the previous Avengers run in the comics. Their relationship came about from their bonding on the Avengers team together, and likely due to them both being super fun-loving characters who also honestly both love a good fist fight. They are both powerful characters who aren't afraid of having fun, and Thor of course was not intimidated by Jen's strength as She-Hulk, but instead admired her for it. Of course, that isn't to say the couple didn't have their challenges. At one point they almost broke up because Jen wasn't sure if Thor loved her solely for her She-Hulk persona and appearance. Thor was actually humbled by Jen, who actually called him out on this, but she was then reassured that he loved her for who she was entirely, both as Jennifer Walters and as She-Hulk, which he admitted he saw as basically one and the same. Super cute. While I was never a big fan of this relationship when it was happening, I have to admit that every time I return to it in the comics when I'm talking about it here on Top 10 Nerd, I gotta say, it makes me more and more a fan of it, and I get it more and more every time I return to it. I just think maybe these two could be shipped together, maybe it would really work. And now I'm like, man, now that relationship's gone. I love how when there's ships that I come around to after the ship has already happened. That ship has sailed. Number 5, Sentry. This one didn't happen in the main continuity, but as is implied in this what if the conditions were right in the main continuity, it could have very well gone down like this. Sentry is often thought of as the Superman of the Marvel Universe, or one of them anyways, so it would make sense that he'd stand a chance against Thor, as Superman in the comics is basically a godlike figure. However, when these two faced off during Dark Reign's Siege story, it was Thor who came out on top. Now, in the What If comic centered around Siege, Sentry instead kills Ares earlier on, which means that when Thor comes to face him, he actually isn't as exhausted from that immediate fight, which is what happens in the main continuity. This means he has enough stamina to not only defeat Thor, but also to destroy, get this, all of the Avengers besides. Yeah, Sentry is super powerful, and I do believe he could take Thor in a fight. Number 4, Scarlet Witch. I'm not surprised that Wanda could take Thor myself. Scarlet Witch is one of the most powerful heroes in, I would say, the entire Marvel multiverse after all. However, some might be surprised by this, especially when you consider that Thor is also partly connected to the realm of magic, and especially if you consider that, Wanda is a magic user, so she's kinda squishy. Of course, Thor doesn't typically tend to use magic to fight, and Wanda being squishy, I mean, you gotta get to her first. Now, Thor does have something magical that he could use here, and that would be his hammer Mjolnir, but that was not enough to save him from Wanda's spells when she was forced to turn on her friend and fellow Avenger after he'd been mind controlled by Red Skull, who was using Professor X's brain at the time. Yep, that's what happened, that was the whole thing. Scarlet Witch managed to use her powers to hold Thor back, preventing him from hurting her or any other heroes or villains. And I would say she did so pretty successfully. Personally, I would say Wanda could beat Thor if she wanted to. Just normally they don't have to fight because they're friends. Number 3, Phoenix. The Phoenix is one of the few heroes who succeeded in destroying Thor. I mean, it's hard to compete with the sheer impossible force of the Phoenix. This time around, it wasn't just one person who took down Thor as the Phoenix instead. It was Thor against 5 individuals with the power of the Phoenix Force, which was split between them, who each honestly handily defeated him. The group of Phoenix-empowered heroes who he went up against included Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Magik, and Colossus. In fact, at one point Colossus was even seemingly able to separate Thor from Mjolnir, not an easy feat. Also, if Thor faces off against the Phoenix, who's kind of like his mom as well, does that mean that he got schooled by his own mom? Is that what that means? Gotta ask. Number 2, Hulk. Hulk and Thor are 2 of the greatest rivals in the comics. Now sure, they're both heroes, and sure, they're both friends, but that doesn't mean that they have not gotten into a fight or 2, or several, or well, a bunch. Sometimes these fights can even get pretty serious, sometimes they just are carried out to settle once and for all which one of them is the strongest Avenger. So, who really is the strongest Avenger? Well, while many of the fights that I've read show Thor coming out on top, there have been a few times when Hulk has proven that he really is the strongest there is, even against a cosmic god who wields a magic hammer. In fact, Mjolnir tends to be one of the greatest challenges that Hulk often faces in his fights against Thor. But in one fight featured in the Hulk Let the Battle Begin story, Hulk finds a way around this by simply not trying to move the hammer itself, but instead Thor's own arm that's holding the hammer. In this way, Hulk is able to basically make Thor hit himself with his own hammer, knocking himself out. Pretty good go around. Pretty smart, Hulk. Number 1, Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill humbled Thor in his very first fight against him. The two faced off when Beta Ray Bill mistook Thor for an enemy, threatening his people, survivors from his homeworld who were basically searching for a new home. The two fought and Bill won, initially even claiming Mjolnir for himself as spoils from their fight. Of course, that would all be corrected, and then they'd become friends, but hey, Beta Ray, he got it. That's about it. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Thor is known for being one of the most powerful Avengers around. He's at a very literal god tier. That's what I was gonna say. I started to say that and then I questioned if it made sense, but it does.